Can you guys give us a minute? We're going to just catch up.
Oh, didn't see you there. Do you know when I get started on the questions that I printed out?
Do I know what?
When I should get started on this? Like, should we just chat casually for a minute?
I feel like that's appropriate.
Okay.
Some casual chatter, and then, honestly, don't ever get to this stuff.
Okay. All right.
That's the, let's get real. Mm-hmm. Let's get under the hood.
Let's get real fast.
Yeah.
Like, what's on my pants?
Yeah.
I realized on my way here tonight that I had a stain on my pants.
And I just asked backstage if she knows what's on her pants. She doesn't know.
But I did decide it would be the name of a really good talk show or game show.
Game show.
Yes. What's on your pants? Crowd goes mild. Great. Well, I feel like everyone here is here to see me.
That's fair.
Yes. These are my people that followed me here to see what I'm going to ask you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have any Culver City fans.
Are we in Culver City?
Yeah, apparently. Or are we in Mar Vista? Because there is a bitter rivalry between Mar Vista and Culver City.
It's nasty. It is a nasty rivalry.
But you're East Side, right?
Well, we don't need to tell people my address.
Yeah. I'm out of my comfort zone.
And by the way,
I don't even,
I'm not East Side. I feel like people always think I'm East Side because I'm gay. People just assume I went east.
I feel like I've seen you at Gelson's on the East Side.
Well, that doesn't mean, you can travel other places.
Which means that's what made me think, that has something to do with being gay.
Okay. Going to Gelson's?
Yeah.
Gelson's.
I don't know what, but yeah, it's something.
What were you doing at Gelson's?
Listen.
Now, talking about that. What's on your pants?
So much. I've been wearing these pants basically every day for the last 8 days. This is the last stop on my book tour.
Congrats.
Thank you. And thank you, Tig, for doing this and being here.
It is my pleasure. I'll go anywhere for you, my dear.
Well, fantastic. All the way to Culver City.
That's right. To the straight area of town.
Yeah. Did we settle? Are we in Culver City or Mar Vista?
I don't know. You had a car come pick me up, and I didn't pay any attention to where I was going, and then I just arrived wherever we are. Mm-hmm. And do you know if we're in Culver City?
We are in Mar Vista.
All the talk about Culver City.
The Mar Vista people are like, it's Mar Vista. That's where we are.
People do seem enraged right now. Sorry about that. Clap if you're only here to see me. Should we get started?
Why don't I ask you all the questions?
Absolutely.
How much did you love my book?
I loved it so much that when I had time, I read parts of it.
Amazing.
Yes. And
you read the excerpts that the publisher said, the blurbs?
No, I read way more than that.
Oh, cool.
Yes. But we'll get into that.
All right, good.
What else do you want to ask me?
Where'd you grow up?
Mississippi and Texas. But I feel like you probably knew some of that.
I know, but this is for them.
Oh.
I
forgot that I wasn't just here to talk to my friend Ed. Mississippi and Texas.
And I'm from Georgia.
He's from Georgia.
We're bringing a real
southern.
We're just bringing some southern vibes.
Yeah, we
to
are.
California, which is.
That's right.
That's what we do.
I'm out of questions.
You're out already?
I'm out. I am out. Yeah.
Because you didn't even read anything on that paper.
Well, I realized this was my grocery list.
For Gelson's?
Ham. Mm-hmm. That's not true. Can I tell you, speaking of Mississippi, my cousin who is a grown woman, 29, married, has a child, a couple of years ago, and she's not, and I know people hear Mississippi and you picture whatever you're picturing. There are civilized areas and people. My family is one of them. My cousin went to college. She went to business school. Found out a couple of years ago, ham is not an animal. She thought like chicken and fish. There were hams running around.
They don't teach that in business school.
No. No, they do
Where
not.
did she go to business school? In Mississippi?
No, in New Orleans.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
That is one of the few meats that has like multiple names. Ham, bacon. There are all these things that aren't what
That's
it
only
is.
2.
Well, also pig.
Pork.
Ham, pork, bacon, pig.
What'd you say? Beef. That's not a pig.
But it is not a cow also. Her point is that it's not a cow.
Oh, right. I was going to say, are you from Mississippi?
Also, here's another term for pork from like an 80s or 90s ad campaign from the pork lobby. Does anyone remember this? The other white meat? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
All right, well, let's get in to these questions.
All right.
Ed.
I'm an onion. Just start peeling the layers.
Okay.
It's gonna get real.
All right. If it's going to get real, then tell us a little bit about why you chose to write this companion book for the SNAFU podcast.
Wow, I'm so glad
What
you asked.
spawned your interest?
What a great question.
In this
Tig.
type, I'm a slow delivery. I'm still asking the question. What spawned your interest in this type of history project in the first place?
That feels like a question you wrote. You use words like spawned in a lot of regular
And snafu.
Yeah.
I
in a
always
lot
say
of-
snafu.
Every time we talk on the phone, you're like, "This, what spawned this? What spawned
What
that?"
spawned this snafu?
So, I do this podcast. The origin of I'll give a little bit of the background on the podcast, and then because that really is what led to the book. But basically, everybody does a podcast, including you.
Yep, it's called Handsome. Check it out.
Check it out. And there's so many great podcasts out there, and a lot of them are just interviews kind of style shows, which I love. And I was consuming a ton of these shows as a fan, and I was like, do I fit into this podcast space somewhere? If I do, what does it look like? I didn't really want to do an interview show because I felt like there were just so many of them out there. And it's like, well, history is a fun thing that I've always loved to just kind of go down these little rabbit holes of looking into stuff. This show Rutherford Falls was very kind of history oriented. I played an historian who owned a museum in that show, and I just it was something that felt very organic to me. But then it's like, well, I still want it to be funny. And then it was like, well, what's funny in history? The snafus, the car crashes of history that we can't turn away from. Those will be fun. Like, that'll be a fun thing to do a podcast about. So we partnered with the great people at Film Nation and their podcast department and set to work on this thing. And it just turned into a really intense project with deep research and heavy audio production. And
Were you expecting that, the deep research, or did you not account for that?
It was very much the first season. There's 3 seasons out now. The first season was very much kind of like discovery. Like, what are we doing? Like, how is this gonna feel and sound like? And I think we were very ambitious, but it worked. Like, it really clicked, and we kind of figured out, got a rhythm on how to do this. And so the podcast is like, each season is 8 episodes, and it's a really deep dive into one particular snafu. Season 1 is about a Cold War crazy snafu from 1983, and on and on. Anyway, in doing all that research, you just accumulate basically like a pile of these crazy stories. And some of them don't warrant like the full podcast treatment. Like it doesn't have quite as much material there, but it's still really funny or interesting. And those just started to pile up, and it was like, all right, this is fodder for a book.
Yeah.
It's like it's all right here.
So what would you say is like the clear difference between the podcast and the book?
So the podcast is very like deep. It's like a deep dive. So it's 45 to an hour long episodes about one thing, and you really learn a lot. And it's fun and funny. It's very immersive. We think of it as like a cinematic audio experience. I don't know, any Radiolab fans out there? All right, great. That was sort of our North Star in terms of storytelling, the production, the sound design, and how we wove in interviews and stuff. And the book is much more of a survey. It's just sort of like quick. Each chapter is a different snafu. So it's not nearly as deep a dive, and the stories are just kind of quick and fun and easy. Which is part of what makes this book such a fantastic gift for Mother's Day or Father's Day. You can pick it up and just go anywhere and find a 5 to 10 page little fun story. It's basically a book of short stories. There's 31 snafus in there. It's a great beach read. It's perfect for your nightstand. You can read it in the bathroom.
Really?
Yes.
You know of people that have read it in the bathroom?
I'm just saying you can. I haven't asked people, but I've been told that it gets things moving. That one chapter is equivalent to 9 grams of fiber. So.
Would it be the longest enema
ever given? So there is a chapter about the Ever Given, which is a container ship that was wedged in the Suez Canal. That's one of the more recent ones that you might remember. And yeah.
Now, and I'm just curious to ask the audience who in the audience is not familiar with the podcast or the book, and this is just like, oh, I'm curious to see what's going on. Oh, well, that's good, to like turn people on to snafus. I didn't realize this until I was doing my semi-deep dive on the book, that SNAFU stands for situation, normal, all fucked. Right?
Yeah.
You can you think?
Well, if what you silently said is what I think you said, then yeah, I think you're right.
Are you guys okay with me saying the F word? Fucked. But you can also put fouled up. That's how you kind of clean it up a little.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I also learned that. Not from your book or podcast, but when I was researching SNAFU and SNAFUs. I dove in here and there,
cool.
and
That's a good one. That is a good one for when I take this into schools.
To be able to say all fouled up.
All fouled up.
Now, speaking of schools, were you into history as a kid?
As a little kid.
How little?
So, like, pretty little. I think all this started with a fascination. Like, I wasn't into history classes so much, like in high school or college. But as a little kid, we had a huge collection of National Geographic magazines, and I just was always so into that. I would just like pull them out and thumb through and just be. It was such a vessel for curiosity, and it made me really want to be Indiana Jones. Because
how did that go?
It hasn't worked out yet. Also, I don't think I think that like his version of that profession is now frowned upon. So, but at the time, it was just adventurous and curious and wonderful. Yeah, those National Geographics and also the encyclopedia, the World Book Encyclopedia. Did anybody have those in their homes? I just loved those things. You could pull them off and just be like, aardvarks. Like, what's up with aardvarks?
So you started on page 1.
Yeah, right.
Because that's the double A, right?
Sure. Yeah, but you could also just be like, Zanzibar. Where, like, what's the deal? What's the population? Where is it on the map? And anything that you wanted. I couldn't believe that we had, like, this book set that could just tell me anything I wanted to know. And it was that kind of like, I don't know, this like pattern of curiosity, which also I now think is sort of an ADHD thing of just like wanting to know. Aardvark. Yeah, wanting to know
Zanzibar.
more and more. Wanting to know more about the dumbest shit, like the most random things you can think of. It's both fun and also can be a horrific waste of time. But the podcast and the book have become these, what I hope and feel are very productive applications of that curiosity and interest.
And would you say, were you a bad student?
Yeah, I was a pretty bad student.
You were?
Yeah.
So your history teachers would be surprised to find out.
I think so.
I think you should contact. What if I surprised you with your history teachers?
Yeah.
Come on.
Come on out.
We should have planned better. That would have been
Bean.
so fun.
Yeah, or Mr. Oh, what was his name? Dickerson? Yeah.
Mrs. Bean?
Mrs. Bean.
And Mr. Dickerson.
Yeah. Okay, very, this is apropos of nothing, but the rumor was that he had,
Go on.
that he had lost a ball in an accident.
Like a testicle.
Yeah, which I think was just kids like making fun of a nerdy teacher in hindsight, but that was the rumor.
And that is how they made fun of him.
Yeah, was to just sort of
say
like,
he's missing a ball.
Yeah, just to whisper like he lost a ball in an accident.
And did they say what accident caused the ball to roll away?
No, but there were a lot of theories.
Ooh, do tell.
Well, so somebody.
We are getting off track, but
yeah, I knew.
You know, I love a good ball story.
Yeah, this is your genius, Tig. Like you do get under the hood. The one that
especially when there's balls.
Yeah, the one that made the most sense was bicycle related, and I don't even remember, but it was
like he ran over his ball.
No, like he was in a bike accident. He was riding his bike and
just head-on collision. His ball flew off.
Yeah,
I don't know how those things work.
It was just the G forces. Just
G-force.
Like
off goes the ball.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, where were we? So you know, we all heard in our bios that, I mean, or yours especially, I mean, you've done a lot. You've been an actor, a podcaster, a writer, comedy writer, all of these things. I mean, you know, musician, but we're not here to talk about that. Guys, settle down. We're not talking about that. But do you feel like this is the first time how did all of those experiences inform writing this book? How, like everything that you've done, here we are now today, you are an author. It's a quick switch from balls to
literature.
Yes.
You know, I think that I've been approached about doing books a bunch over the last 10 years. People are like, you know, my agent is always like, somebody wants you to write a book about the hangovers, or somebody wants you to write a book about like
somebody.
Yeah, like some publisher will call an agent and just be like, we can make a little money off Helms.
Yeah.
Right? What's the angle?
Yeah.
What's the Helms angle? And they just start pitching you this stuff, and I was like, I don't know, I don't want to do that. It just didn't feel organic. But then somehow through, weirdly, like I do kind of feel like the SNAFU podcast was a sort of like a culmination of sorts, because it's so deep. And there are stories in the podcast that are very heavy and poignant and stirring, and that's not something I really expected coming up through comedy that I would be diving into. And so that sort of just, I think, opened my mind about just creatively, like what would be, like what else I can do and how else, like the book just felt like a very, like a natural step from that. And I've really enjoyed it. I think there's going to be more.
You enjoyed the process of writing?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to write? I wrote a book. It took me 4 years, and you can read it in an afternoon next to the pool.
Yeah.
How long did yours take?
Like a year and a half.
Okay.
And but the nice thing about this book is that it was not overwhelming to work on, because it's such short chunks. So each chapter is a story, and that caters well to like the way my brain works. Like I think writing a novel would just be terrifying and overwhelming, and even writing like a memoir feels, or something along those lines. I don't know, anything like a narrative that's like 200-300 pages feels, maybe I'll get there eventually, but right now that feels like scary.
It doesn't sound like you'll get there.
Yeah.
Based on the ADHD and
yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And also the nice thing, I had a lot of research support on this book, because we built such a great team on the podcast, and so it was, it really was a collective effort, kind of organizing this material and getting the research materials together, and I just was working with great people pulling the information together.
So, in that research, were there any surprises that stuck? I'm sure there were so many surprises, but any that really stuck out to you when you really, because I'm sure you have some idea maybe of what one particular story or SNAFU is about, and then you're like, here's the twist.
Well,
in a major way.
So, okay, I'm going to back up, or sort of like go high altitude for a second, because hopefully all the stories in the book are that for everybody, because and again, starting with the podcast, the idea, like, I didn't want to tell stories that people know. I wanted to tell history that feels new or fresh, or kind of like rediscovering things. And in the podcast, it was like trying to find stories that have a lot of power and impact, but have been largely forgotten in the sort of popular memory. And that's what that same thing I brought to this sort of like, that was our sort of like organizing principle in building the content for the book. And because of that, like, every story is surprising. Every story is like, holy shit, that happened? Like, that's real? There's a few in the book that you probably have heard of, like the Ever Given, that in the everybody knew when that container ship got wedged in the Suez Canal. But the book is divided up into decades, starting in the 1950s, and there are 3 or 4 or 5 SNAFUs per decade, 50s to the present, which is a pretty arbitrary way to divide it up, but it just kind of made for a clean,
I like
structure.
That. Yeah.
But it's funny, like I did, weirdly, I did grapple with the title a little bit because, not SNAFU, but the sort of subtitle, which is The Definitive Guide to History's Greatest Screw-Ups, because a lot of these are actually pretty obscure. So how do you define greatest screw-ups? Because like there's no chapter that's like World War II, which was like a pretty big screw-up. But it just didn't feel fun to do like the big things that have been exhaustively researched and exhaustively written about and the things that you already know. So, yeah.
What was the one? Was it the assassination attempts of, what was it, 600?
Yeah, 634 attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro.
That all failed.
Yeah, or were aborted, or but there's
who is counting?
There's records of this stuff in the CIA. It's crazy. It's 600, and I in the book I sort of go through my top 5 favorite ones, and it really does. You read these things and you're like, there's so many things in this book that feel like they were written by a room of comedy writers.
That one definitely,
yeah,
especially 600.
Yeah,
and like
because that's like when you're at that volume of. It's people sitting around pitching ideas.
Right.
Which is like, to me, and they're so absurd. My favorite one is they wanted to put thallium salts, which is a particular kind of poison, into his shoes. And what that does to the human body is it makes your hair fall out. And the thinking was that if we can make Fidel Castro's beard fall out, then he will be the laughingstock of Cuba, and he will lose all of his gravitas as a military leader.
But what a gentle assassination.
Right? Yeah, that was more of a sort of like, leadership decapitation more than a... But it was so like... It's so like this reverse engineered from such a crazy...
It does, like all of the violent attempts, and then the clown in the room that's like... oh my God, let's make his beard fall.
Yeah.
It's such a great leap.
Well, and it does sound like it started with, wouldn't it be funny if...
Yeah. Oh my God, yes it would. But then all of them become funny when it goes over 600 attempts.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, why did you stop at 634? Like... Why not?
Well, because there are no other options.
Yeah, they pretty much...
That's the highest number I know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, people must have just been like, let's just move on. Mm-hmm. Let's go.
Yeah, forget it. Cuba's fine.
Were any of those attempts, let's knock one of his balls off?
I didn't read every single one, to be honest, so I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But that one feels good. Yeah, like just put him on a bicycle.
Yeah. Head-on collision, ball goes flying.
Yeah, the G-forces. Yeah.
But still has the beard.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Let's see. What is your favorite story?
Well, they're all my babies, So it's hard to pick, but I think the other one that I just love because it's so absurd, I'll tell you 2. There's one that I love.
Just one.
Okay. There's another one that's absolutely insane, which is in the 1950s. This is the Cold War, so one thing that emerges when you read the book, the Cold War did not bring out the best in us. Like, we were very scared and made a lot of really terrible decisions. This is one of them. So a plan was hatched to shoot a nuclear warhead at the moon. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, the thinking was that if we can hit the moon with a nuclear warhead, the Soviets will see that, and they'll be like, holy shit. And then I guess we win the Cold War, because they're so scared. because they're like, oh my God, the Americans can hit the moon with a warhead. Like, we're done. Like, we just surrender. So they really thought that this would like kind of shut down the Cold War or like scare the Soviets really badly. So they went really far down this road. They spent a lot of time and money researching this. Carl Sagan worked on this project. A young Carl Sagan. He likes planets. But he was part of this plan to actually shoot a warhead at one.
Millions of dollars went into this.
Yeah, untold millions.
Yes.
They eventually realized that any tiny malfunction or miscalculation could very easily result in the nuclear warhead slingshotting around the gravitational field of the moon and just coming right back at us. Which is, I don't know, that could be cool too. That could be, it's sort of like when a bully on the schoolyard starts like punching himself. And he's like, look how tough I am.
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
Yeah, but it's at the end of the day,
I feel like I
not
could
good.
see reading that in a headline right now, that we tried to
Yes.
do that. That doesn't
right.
feel too
Oh,
far
boy.
off.
The other thing they realized is that even if they hit the moon, even if they actually were on target, that it wouldn't look like much. It would just be, because I think the hope was like the Soviets would see this big like crater on the moon or see like a big explosion on the moon. But they realized that it would really just probably be kind of a little gray dust cloud. You wouldn't really see very much. And that detail I love because that is literally Wile E. Coyote. Like that is, every time Wile E. Coyote falls off a cliff, it's like, poof, just that little dust cloud. And this is a Looney Tunes idea. Like you could see Acme on the side of this warhead very plausibly.
So when you were saying before that you have this, a lot of great researchers, and you would have to, but where do researchers even begin to get this information?
So the only reason this is a good question because
Thank you.
Because it's important to point out the only reason we know about that nuclear warhead shooting at the moon, that whole thing, the only reason we know is because one of Carl Sagan's biographers was researching him, looking through all of his old papers, and he had actually put this project on a fellowship application, like applying to something right after grad school. And this researcher, his biographer was like, I'm going to put Carl Sagan aside for a second and look into this moon thing. And they uncovered it. And all of that's to say that the only reason we know about any of this stuff is because of so many dogged journalists and writers and people that just have it's for sure, a huge round of applause. And because of that, when you just start looking for snafus, they bubble up. They're on Google. They're all, they're in history books.
But where do you Google? Snafus, 1973.
Yes, 1960s disasters, problems. I mean, it's like there are books. There are books that focus on these things that aren't funny, and that are written by serious historians, unlike me.
And has the government reached out and been like, do not tell anybody?
Shut up. No, but I actually feel like now, this book would piss Trump off because it's honest about our history, which he is seems right. Doesn't it feel like we're in this moment where he's just don't say any bad stuff about us?
Yeah.
That's anti-American. To point out that the CIA tried to surgically implant microphones into cats' ears and then train the cats to go sit next to bad guys so you could hear. And
As a cat lover, that was one of my favorites, I must say. Microphone on a cat?
Yeah.
Sitting next to a bad guy?
Yeah, and the only thing that came from that entire like research effort was the startling discovery that you can't train cats.
And how much money went into that? You don't have that right
Millions.
off. Millions, yes. Are there, I mean, I know you've already shared some anecdotes, but are there any other anecdotes that you would like to share? I mean, because it is like, it's like like you were saying, an encyclopedia of aardvark to Zanzibar. There's so many. Was there well, no, that's not a good question.
I can tell you another one.
Yeah.
This one I love because it's not as absurd. It's actually some of the snafus in the book are kind of have this silver lining of being a very obvious lesson that we learned culturally from it, or there are heroes that emerge during snafus, and this is one of those. Also in the 1950s, one of the first nuclear reactors is built in Deep River, Ontario, which is just up the Ottawa River from the city of Ottawa. And it's very early in nuclear technology. There's a very Homer Simpson series of mistakes that happen at this nuclear reactor, and a meltdown starts. And it's a terrible accident, and this is the first nuclear reactor meltdown in human history. So nobody really knows what to do. They're freaking out. They call the US military and they're like, what do we do? Do you have anybody that can help us? And they're like, yeah, actually, we have this 28-year-old kid who's been working on our nuclear sub program, and he's extremely knowledgeable about all this stuff. He's a great leader. We're going to send him up with a team to help you out. That was Jimmy Carter. Yeah. So that he became that. This is a story about a young Jimmy Carter. He runs up there, gets to Deep River, Ontario. The reactor's melting down. It's so radioactive that they can only be in close proximity to the reactor core for 90 seconds at a time, or else they'll die of radiation poisoning. So
I know what ends up happening.
You do?
Mm-hmm. But go ahead.
All right. Don't spoil it. Okay. So they build a replica of this reactor core on a nearby tennis court. So they start rehearsing this disassembly, and they drill it and they drill it and drill it until they've got this plan down perfectly. And then they start running in like a relay team of NASCAR pit crews, just like 90 seconds at a time. They can only be in there. So every time they do something to the reactor core, they come outside and they do it to their replica as well, so they can keep track of everything that's happening. It's a brilliant plan, and it keeps all of the workers healthy, and they save the reactor. There's still a partial meltdown. There's a lot of damage done, but they prevent basically a Chernobyl from happening. That very easily could have been North America's Chernobyl. And I love this story because it's, I grew up in a Southern Democrat household. My dad was very politically engaged, and we loved Jimmy Carter. He was like a venerated figure in our home. But I feel like, sadly, in sort of the popular memory, he's considered kind of wimpy, Even though he did a lot of really badass stuff, both as a president and especially as he's one of the most productive post-presidents we've ever had. And I think of him as a hero. I always have, and I've always resented this kind of popular sentiment that he's just sort of this wimpy, ineffective guy. But this is like a great little nugget of proof that he was a really courageous badass with serious leadership. And
I can really accentuate this point even more with a detail about this story, this snafu, in your book, that when I said I know what happens, this is what I'm talking about. His urine was radioactive for how long?
Like 3 months afterwards.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
That's a badass.
Yeah.
Okay? Make fun of Jimmy Carter all day long, but have you had radioactive urine?
And they were very afraid that all these workers would not be able to have children. And Jimmy Carter had 4 very healthy children. He's a tough guy.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Give it up for Jimmy Carter.
Those are some of my favorite live moments, is when one person claps and nobody chimes in. And it's just an awkward, and then you go, oh, did you feel like I should pull back? Nobody's joining? No, she's not even acknowledging that I'm talking to her. Okay. What are some patterns that you observed and lessons studying snafus?
One of the things that I don't think this is something that we sort of culturally would say we learned from this book, but the book reiterates it in a very powerful way, which is that we just don't learn from history at all, which is so sad and dumb. We're just so dumb. We're so dumb, and we just do the dumbest stuff. But I do think there is a positive takeaway from really digging into these snafus. Like the more you look into these really dumb or kind of horrifying, crazy events from history, it's very easy just when we're in this moment like we're in right now. And this I think applies whatever your political stripes are, wherever you fall on the sort of conservative liberal spectrum. This moment that we're in feels volatile. It feels like it feels unstable. It feels a little like we're polarized, and there's a just tremendous uncertainty about the future, which is just unsettling, makes us anxious. When we look back at crazy things in the past, it's actually kind of nice to be reminded that we've been there before. Like, people have been terrified at lots of times in the past, and that at least all this stuff in this book, and like most of the time, there's some sense that we got through a thing, or that we got to the other side and found some sense of equilibrium again. And so I don't mean to be like glib or Pollyannish about the moment that we're in right now, because I think it does feel legitimately scary in a lot of ways. And I don't know what will happen. But I do think, looking back, it's nice to be just sort of reminded that we have felt this way before, or previous generations have felt this way before, and that they have gotten through these moments. And so maybe that gives a sense that there's a light at the end of the tunnel as well. I'd love to talk a little bit about season 2 of the podcast, because that's one of my favorite stories, and it feels insanely prescient right now.
It's not on my list of questions, unfortunately.
Keep moving.
Let's hear it.
Well, so one of the things that's so, I think, startling about the moment that we're in right now is this feeling that the people running the DOJ and the FBI and some other of our government institutions just feel very political in a way that, or partisan in ways that doesn't mesh with how those office holders historically have been appointed. They're usually presidents go to great lengths to appoint people that have a career of being independent, and they're appointed and then they're left alone. Now we're in a moment where it feels like the Department of Justice and the FBI in particular feel just like political wings of the White House. So that's unsettling. But let's look back for a second. Season 2 of the podcast is all about an event in 1971 when in Philadelphia. Philadelphia was a hotbed of political activism in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of activists, this was civil rights activists and anti-Vietnam War activists in particular, and a lot of them were feeling like the FBI was harassing them and surveilling them illegally, and just lurking and being, and sometimes beating people up. I mean, it just really was out of control, this sense that law enforcement was really harassing people, and not for crimes, not for doing anything wrong, just because they were clearly political enemies of the administration at the time, and of course J. Edgar Hoover, who was like the arch conservative and a national hero at the time. So a group of activists realized, like, we have nowhere to turn. We're desperate. This feels like an injustice, feels un-American. What do we do? So they staged a heist, and they broke into an FBI office at phenomenal risk to themselves and their families. And they broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia, and they stole all the files. This is pre-hard drive, so basically all the field offices had like all the files, and they
like a lot of like whoa,
they put them in
paper
suitcases.
flying out here and there.
No, they put them in suitcases. They planned this thing for months, and they're not professional criminals. These are activists who felt a need to do something because of out of a sense of justice, and so they pulled it off. And they poured through these documents, and they found proof. They found documented evidence of a lot of this illegal malfeasance going on in the FBI, and just abuse, like flagrant abuse of civil liberties of citizens. They package this stuff up. They send it to a bunch of reporters and Congress people, senators, and everyone chickens out. Everyone who gets these packets sends it right back to the FBI. We're not touching this, except for one reporter, a young woman at the Washington Post named Betty Metzger. She is like, this is a story. Now, the White House has already caught wind of this, and they're calling all the newspapers saying, if you got these files, you will be prosecuted if you publish this stuff. This is pre-Watergate, by the way, pre-Pentagon Papers. The Washington Post has never dealt with anything like this before. No newspaper has. And Ben Bradlee and the Washington Post brass decides, we're going to publish this. And so they publish Betty's article, and it basically leads to the grand toppling of J. Edgar Hoover's horrific legacy of abuse of power in being the head of the FBI. It leads to the exposure, the church hearings, the Frank Church hearings. Frank Church was a Democratic senator from Idaho, probably the last one. But he was a really great senator. He led this congressional investigation which later became known as the church hearings. And in those hearings, they uncovered COINTELPRO, which was essentially the program under which the FBI was like doing horrible things to civil rights activists, large communities of color, and Vietnam War activists. It was under this program that they sent poison pen letters to Martin Luther King, trying to convince him to kill himself. These letters came from the FBI. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. J. Edgar Hoover died right around this time, so he didn't actually live to see the full toppling of his legacy. But it basically was a moment where people were terrified of the FBI. They did something courageous, and it led to what became the church hearings led to the only reason we have any congressional oversight over all of these intelligence institutions, the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA, and others, and that was a critical, huge change in how our government functioned. We told that story in season 2 of the podcast. Betty Metzger participated with us, as did many of the burglars who participated, the ones that are still alive. They're all in the podcast. And this is what I mean. Like, I set out to do something kind of fun and funny, and suddenly we found ourselves like in some real shit, like really powerful and moving, stirring stuff. The stories, the human stories of these burglars and the risks that they took. So, you know, some of them had children, families, and they were willing to be caught and put in jail for really big, long sentences because they felt this injustice was so horrific. And those kinds of stories, I think, just coming back full circle, like we're in a moment now where the FBI feels kind of scary, or it might get scary. We've been there before, and courageous people pushed through it and actually made a difference in an incredibly powerful way. I don't know if I would say that's instructive. Like, I don't know if I would say that means go break into an FBI office right now, but I do think
we should, all of us tonight.
Let's go, guys. I have torches and pitchforks in my trunk. Let's go. But it's a reminder. Like, yes, passionate people who believe in something can get some real good shit done.
Indeed, and then we won't learn from it.
Yeah. And then we'll, you know.
And then we'll come full circle again.
We'll just come full circle.
But I agree, you know, as tough as things are and scary as things may feel, this is really extreme, but I go to, like, God, it used to be normal to, like, behead somebody back in the old-timey times. And I'm like, we don't do that anymore. Like,
well, even in this time in the 60s and 70s, like, politicians were assassinated in the United States, you know?
Yeah.
Bobby Kennedy, JFK, it's like, and Martin Luther King, like, Malcolm X, like, there was so much crazy violence going on that thankfully, someone tried to assassinate Trump, but
a few times. Maybe somebody's going to break a record. I don't know.
I don't know.
Let's not get into that. But I'm also curious. Like, there's so many amazing stories. How do you decide what to choose, what to put in your book, what to put in the podcast? And also, you must have people. Are people contacting you or stopping you on the street, going, "I have a story. I know I have some inside scoop on this thing"?
A few people actually on this book tour have been like, "Did you hear about this?"
Yeah.
Like, random.
And do you have
like,
a lot of conspiracy theorists that reach out to you?
Not yet. I haven't. I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm getting the vibe on it. Yeah, that guy. I looked right at him. There he is.
You know, weirdly, I think just like writing about real stuff that's crazy is weirdly a little bit of a hedge against conspiracy theories, because it's like the research.
But they think that's real, don't you?
Yeah. Okay. That's the title of my next book.
I'm curious. You're obviously going to do you're going to do SNAFU too, right? The next book, because there is, like you said, so much going on.
Well, it's such a fun space to play in. It feels like there's so many different kinds of ways different ways to frame snafus. We could do like a book about sports snafus, or different time periods, medieval snafus.
Yeah.
You know.
But I'm saying, like, you chronologically, you go through this, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and I'm like, right now we're sitting in a bunch of. Thank you. we're sitting in the middle of a bunch of snafus, so
Yeah.
it seemed, potential snafus, more to come.
Yeah, it does feel like we're swimming in
Yeah.
just like a big old sea of snafus right now.
So I'm
And-
seeing SNAFU 2, SNAFU 3,
Yeah.
all coming
that
down
are
the
just
pike.
about the last like 100 days.
SNAFU 100.
Yeah.
Have you ever, this is unrelated to your book, but just curious, any personal snafus in your life that you'd like to share?
So many, but not so many for public consumption.
Wow. So should we end there?
Let's do in there because I do think we're going to get some audience questions. I think it'd be
We
nice
are. We're going to
to
take
hear
some
from you
audience
guys.
questions.
So I went to ChatGPT and said, I'm struggling to ask Ed Helms a question about his new book, SNAFU. And here's the question. It suggested 3, but this is the best one. If The Office had a historical SNAFU-themed episode, which disaster would Michael Scott have proudly caused?
I mean, isn't that every episode of The Office? Like some horrible disaster? I'm a little confused by the question. Is it historical snafus that he...
If The Office had a historical SNAFU-themed episode, which disaster would Michael Scott have proudly caused?
I don't know. I feel like the Ever Given container ship getting wedged into the Suez Canal totally fits his particular kind of
SNAFU.
yeah, his particular weaknesses. Because that accident was so mundane. Like it was like people in the wheelhouse of this ship, like kind of panicking, trying to figure out what to do. I mean, you can imagine an episode of The Office, or something feeling like an Office episode, unfolding in the wheelhouse of that ship as they're trying to adjust for the wind and then back up, but there's a guy behind them and somebody's yelling at the navigator, and the navigator is like Oscar, and he's like, I don't know, this is the data, this is all I have. And then Dwight Schrute is freaking, he's like the engineer freaking out, like, we're losing power. It just, that one feels and Michael Scott as the skipper, just like frozen with fear. I don't know.
This isn't a follow-up question, but I will tell you, for those that don't know, I was on an episode of The Office, and to this day, I get recognized as that being my only credit. Where people will come up and be like, oh, you're from The Office. And I was like, yeah, 13 years ago for 1 second.
Yeah.
It's insane how massive that show is.
Ed, it's a bit of a preview question, but I wonder about 1 or 2 snafus that are on the list that you haven't done a deep dive into, but you're just dying to get into, really curious about.
Season 4 of the podcast is going to take a little bit of a different shape, and I'm going to have guests on. Tig, you're doing it, whether you know it or not. You're coming on the show. And I'm going to tell them about snafus, and then we'll have just sort of fun, kind of spin-off chats about it. But so a lot of things that maybe kind of didn't fit the book or the podcast framework, I think are going to work really well for that. So that'll be things like the Donner Party and Ernest Shackleton's crazy attempt to cross and be the first to cross Antarctica in the early 1900s. That's an incredible story. What else? The Lusitania is one. The cruise ship that was sunk in the North Pacific by Germans. There's so many cool, crazy, weird stories. But that's a sampling.
Now, again, not really related to what we're talking about. No, I know you have 2 kids, and I have 2 children as well. And at bedtime, we have a joke where I say, come on, guys, let's get in bed. I'm going to tell you some boring stories.
Yeah.
And I tell them like mundane stories, like, I was pulling into the parking lot at the grocery store, and they're just like, they fall asleep. And as we've been talking, I'm like, do you ever sit and tell your kids SNAFU stories?
Horrible tragedies.
You should. I mean, leave the tragedy
Well,
out because they'll snooze before.
Yeah. No, not this stuff. Although one of my favorite bits in a movie is, does anyone remember the movie The Great Outdoors? Okay, so there's an amazing, it's such a
One
dumb...
person over there did remember it.
There's such a dumb throwaway joke in that movie, but Dan Aykroyd he has these creepy little twin daughters in the movie, and
I have twins.
He tells them the story. They're like, "Can you tell us a bedtime story?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. Okay." So he tells the story. It's basically like the military left a box in the woods, and it turned out to have this creature that they'd done all these experiments on, and the box spilled and opened up, and this creature came out of the box and terrorized all these children in this little town. Are we good? And the two kids are like wide-eyed, and then it cuts to the morning, and the kids are still just sitting there. I love that. That's what I think most of these stories would do to my kids. But
so they're not sitting on your laps going, "Daddy, tell us more."
Tell us more about nuclear warheads and the Cold War. But
radioactive urine.
But I will say that you do raise a great point, which is that reading this book will make you a killer at dinner parties. Because you will have so many fun, quick little zinger stories that you can just drop, and they're funny, and the people will think you're smart.
I've been sitting here honestly thinking, wow, Ed is a smart guy.
Okay, hi. So I'm a battlefield guide. I work overseas in Europe, and we all love the podcast so much. We use a lot the reference of Fidel Castro with those assassinations and how so many people are shocked about Hitler and all those failed assassination attempts. So we're wondering, from overseas, if you've addressed it a little bit about World War II, but would you ever go more into Second World War, First World War, SNAFUs, because there's just so many to name?
Oh, wow. Wait, now tell me what it is you do again. You're a guide?
Yep.
For...
in Europe for a military history company called the Battlefield Tours of Canada.
My
yep.
God.
And did you just came out because you knew I'd be here interviewing him?
Yes, just for you. Totally.
I can't pinpoint your accent.
Oh my gosh. I'm from Canada.
There it is.
All right. Well, that's, gosh, the World Wars, just a cavalcade of snafus. I would think, I don't know, it's a little bit of a, there's so much written about those. They're so heavily researched, and that's kind of, again, outside of where I've been the most charged up with my curiosity into things that have fallen out of popular memory. But I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know what, I feel like the assassination attempts on Hitler would be a really fun, like we did with Fidel Castro. That could be a fun thing. The Lusitania is a crazy World War II story. I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen you both, some of your work. What's the relationship between you two, and why her to interview you tonight on this particular topic?
Lovers. Ex-lovers.
Yeah.
But good question. Why me? How rude. What the hell am I doing here? I should be telling my kids boring stories.
Yeah.
I failed 3 grades and dropped out of high school. I have a 7th grade education.
but you're smarter than most people I know.
Next question. No, what?
How did we meet? I'm trying to remember the first
from
time.
the comedy scene, Gelson's. Thank you. I mean,
comedy scene.
the comedy world, Largo, the venue here in town at Largo. I did The Office. We also did a movie together.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, where'd she go?
It's a bit of a. It's, yeah.
Yes. Why her?
You have. I guess I don't know why I like hanging out with you, Tig, because you're not very nice to me.
Right.
You've been. We did an interview when we were promoting a movie we did together, where I think you kept telling the reporter how stupid my face was.
Yeah. To translate that, it's because he's so funny and silly, and he makes these little smirky faces when he delivers. He's so unassuming and subtle, and then boom, right out of his stupid face is the funniest thing you'll hear.
That's actually very sweet. You're one of the only people that's ever
complimented you.
Called my comedy subtle, and I appreciate that.
Well, no, you just have a subtle vibe about you,
oh,
like
okay.
when we're chilling and whatever,
Yeah.
and then you'll do. But also when we did that movie, like all of your that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Because when we were doing the movie, the director said, "And now Ed, just riff and do some things," and he just was delivering all these different improv lines and face expressions, and I was like, this stupid face. That's where it came from. That is where it came from. It's when you started riffing and your face went nuts.
Yeah, that was fun.
But we still don't know why I'm here. Next question.
Have you thought about turning one of the stories into a movie?
Yes, and that's there's concerted effort on that front with a couple of these. Actually, the podcast, the season 1 of the podcast, and which is an incredible Cold War story that feels very Doctor Strangelove. So that's kind of a fun, weird comedy, 100% true, but a comedy. And season 2 of the podcast feels really primed to be just a very moving and powerful thriller, because it's also a heist story. I think someone actually had the idea to do the book. Does anyone remember History of the World, the Mel Brooks movie? Mm-hmm. Like, that's such a funny, just compendium of basically just comedy sketches. Mm-hmm. And you could do all of these chapters as comedy sketches, too.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. There's a few things hopefully in the hopper, and then a few very abstract ideas.
Is there a role for me?
No.
Do you think people are more forgiving of failure now, or is there more pressure than ever to appear flawless?
That is such a paradox, that question, because we are in this moment of cancel culture and so much blowback in pop culture to just honest mistakes. I feel like when people make, a lot of people make terrible, horrific mistakes, but then a lot of people make just dumb mistakes, and they're just raked over the coals. And then you have people making real horrible mistakes and paying zero consequences.
And sometimes aren't mistakes.
Sure.
Yeah.
You could argue sending that guy Garcia off to an El Salvadorian prison was a mistake. Everything would seem to indicate that it is a mistake, but then the behavior seems to only prove that was actually part of the plan. So I don't know. It feels like we're very capricious right now culturally. We punish a lot of dumb things, and we just let horrible, huge things slide. And that is one of the really kind of sad lessons looking back at a lot of these snafus. One thing that is very rare is accountability. Like a lot of these things that are terrible that happened, just nobody's paying any. There's like a lot of people make lateral moves. This fucking Mike Waltz guy, like this epic breach. Like I don't care if you're a conservative or liberal. Like he did something so dumb by inviting a reporter into a Signal chat, which is insecure to begin with, and then like just having national security conversations with the reporter in the chat. 6 weeks go by, nothing. And then finally they're like, I don't know what happened within that 6 weeks, but they're like, I think it's time for him to go. It's time to go. He really stunk up the Oval Office bathroom. Like Trump's pissed about that. So he's got to go. But now he's going to be ambassador to the UN. Like, what is going on? So, yeah, that happens over and over and over again. And by the way, everyone does it. Like, everyone protects their own. It's been, the liberals and the conservatives all over government. It's just it's a distressing pattern. Sorry. I wanted to bring this way down right at the end.
Hi, Ed. My name is Aiden. I'm just a huge Office fan.
Thank you.
I really like that episode. Your daughter's amazing. What was your favorite Office episode?
It's funny. I get asked that a lot, and I think there are a few that stand out. This one's no surprise. The dinner party episode was so funny. Like just the production of that episode, it was so hard to get through scene after scene after scene. Some of the hardest laughs of my life. Obviously, Tig's episode was tectonic and just like a pivotal moment in the whole series.
Please be seated. Thank you so much.
Doesn't your kid in that episode punch me? Like I have a big bruise, and the reveal is that it was a child.
Yeah.
Like I come to work with a big
saying
bruise.
that you were, but you don't reveal that right away that it's a kid.
Right.
Like, yeah.
That was very funny. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
The other one I love because we put so much hard work into it was the Sweeney Todd episode, where Andy gets like that was a really challenging and exciting one to do.
I guess that is the end of the evening here, isn't it?
Give it up for Tig Notaro, ladies and gentlemen.
Give it up for Mr. Ed Helms and his stupid face.